Welcome everybody to Uncapped Notes. For those that are listening for the first time, this is our podcast by Hustle Fund. What's really unique that we do each episode is we wanted to use this platform to highlight what's out in the market right now, what are we seeing on our end. And I know a lot of people are just interested in VC and startups as a whole. And so what we actually do is each episode we review the pitch deck of a company that is actively fundraising. And so what we've also done is we leverage the incredible knowledge of our venture fellows, of which Hustle Fund leans on for a lot of our own due diligence as well. And so Parul is here with me. Parul is one of our venture fellows. She's been on a past episode. She crushed it. And so Parul has a great company that she is interested in diving a bit more on. And we're just looking to get her take as to whether she thinks that we should dig in more or if she thinks that it might not be a fit for us. So Parul, thank you so much for making time to join us.
Thanks so much, Val. Happy to be here.
Incredible. And you are in Amsterdam. Is it not like midnight over there?
Yes, it's midnight.
It's midnight. Okay, cool. We appreciate you making the time for it. And so without further ado, I can go ahead and pull up Draco Intelligence, which we have on deck for today. And for whoever's in the chat, feel free to drop any questions. What we'll do is we'll have Parul essentially go through the deck first, just so that we can all understand the company, and then she'll dig into some of her analysis and maybe what she's wanting to dive in on. So let me go ahead and share screen on my end, and we will kick things off. All right, you're able to see my screen, Parul?
Yes.
Cool. Floor is yours.
First thing first, when I Google them, they are called Dragon Enterprises or something. So the names shift. So that was a little bit confusing to make sure I was looking at the right thing. In terms of this light, ultralight AR, very much needed. Athletes, operators still need to figure out how they're targeting these two different segments. Yeah. So that is what I got from the first slide.
What exactly is ultralight AR?
Augmented reality that is extremely lightweight, so it's not a burden to carry, because the problem that happened with the HoloLens and also some of the Microsoft program for the US Army was that it was just a really bulky headset, and that causes a lot of problems in like nausea, headache. So it should be able to move within and rapidly interact. So if like I'm running, if I'm like cycling, there shouldn't be glitches. And that's why it's like really important in mission critical environments or where speed is needed. So yeah, that's what I get out of ultralight AR.
Makes sense. So similar to those like Meta glasses that are out with Ray-Ban.
Yes, so that was end of last year that happened. So they're also moving in what is called HUD, which is heads-up display. So you don't have to look anywhere; it's just right in front of your vision without obstructing the view.
Okay, cool. That's very neat. I'm excited to dive into this one. All right, let's go next slide.
Okay, every second counts. Yes, it's true. Soldiers carry a lot. I don't know what pounds is. I have forgotten the US system now, but I know it's 35 kgs for all of the normal countries in the world who do kgs in the metric system. Eyes off path navigation, really big problem. A lot of armies use compass, maps, radios, GPS, which can lead to you have to stop if you're in a mission critical environment, you can't move. And with drones and aerial surveillance, that's a really big problem. So you need something that is rapid and fast. And it's also the same for athletes. If you see like Tour de France or the Paris-Roubaix, which is going to happen soon, every athlete has a headset and it's wired, you have a radio or you have a wristwatch. So something that is like extremely lightweight that doesn't obstruct the field of movement, which would be super nice. So the problem space is huge.
This is very unique. There's obviously a lot of defense tech right now. It's a hot market, but I have not actually exactly seen an application like this. So I'm keen to dig in more. Let's see.
Okay. AR sunglasses for high movement. High movement, yes. Light 36 ultralight build, that is impressive. There's also a French company, which is Engo, I believe, which is also, it's exactly the same weight of their set 2 with the exact same sort of claims that they're also making, which is on the market. So I'd love to see how their differentiation is later down for the market and the athletes. Clear heads-up display. Meta moved into it last year. So I'd also like to see what is their moat in terms of differentiation. No camera, no recording. Meta again got a lot of heat last year because of their lenses. So that is like tying into the wave of more privacy that is needed. And of course, if you're in a mission critical environments, people wouldn't like the recording to take place until and unless dual use. Would love to see how they're targeting and building and gaining traction in those environments. And from this slide, what I see a picture of a potential mock-up. I would like to know if this is just a rendering, if this is an actual product, and ideally I would like to see a sort of a video of how it looks like when somebody's actually using it and running with it and carrying a 35 kilo backpack and then jumping in ditches or like biking down. So I'd love to see that.
Yeah, totally. So, Parul, you mentioned there is a French startup that you saw doing something similar?
Yes.
Okay. Is this Draco Intelligence Dragon, are they a based in the US?
They are a US company based out of Boston, if I'm not mistaken, or New York. So their pedigree is Harvard. There's not a lot of about the team online, which could be by design, but they're based out of the East Coast.
Okay, cool. I'm interested, and I'm sure they'll get into it in the deck, this kind of dual use. It seems like they're targeting two different segments of both athletes and I guess the combat operators. I'm curious to see what the mesh between those looks like. So let's keep going.
This just shows me what I will look like. Again, I'd like to see more like a video and know if, because this doesn't tell me anything about how far they are in development, how far they're iterating, what are the iteration cycles. I would love to see that rather than just a mock up rendering of what the product is.
Makes sense.
Okay. The defense application is actually the most interesting for me out of the sports because there's a lot happening in defense right now, also because of the geopolitical environment that we're in. Pilot engagement with US Navy SEALs, that's good. How are they doing it? Who did it? Who got the into that operation? There's a lot changing in the US military with making sure that it's easier to have more innovation. And they have also programs where they're like building in more interactive ecosystem and interactive decision making with thousands of data points. So they're building those. Here, I would like to know when they're field testing interest, how many, who they are, if they can just put metrics like we're talking to like Delta Force team, for example, X or something. So I would like to see some metrics, and I would like to also hear get to know how they're getting into these because it's complex processes, it's complex recruitment cycles. They have changed a bit in the last years, but I would like to know who is doing it for the team because that is a crucial lever, especially for defense.
Yeah, that's a great point you raise. To what you mentioned, so when looking at traction, because it's so early stage for these companies and essentially at the stage which we invest in, what you're mentioning, Parul, is that you don't necessarily need to showcase that you're generating a ton of revenue, but you do need to be showing how you expect to kind of wedge into that market and also maybe some specifics on some of the pilot programs that you've been doing and things like that. More so than just looking for big numbers, we are looking for what is your competitive edge to actually get in with your ICP. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and especially because this market of like hardware in high stakes environment has swallowed up very well funded tech heavy companies in the past. So if you look at Magic Leap, they had to pivot. If you look at the US Army, they had to stop their program, the EVAS program, because it was causing nausea and headache because it was a helmet mounted set. So I would like to know sort of what is your differentiation, what is your mode, both the hardware and the software, and then how are you ensuring that you're able to compete or at least differentiate a bit from these very well-funded and grounded players in the industry, especially in defense.
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's keep going.
US triathlon, okay, this they're just telling how they're doing in terms of the consumer part of things, the sports. Ineos Grenadiers, okay, I'm a road cyclist, so I always love That here again, I see names, I don't know exactly what they're doing with them. I
Mm.
don't know if they have piloted with them. I don't know if they had calls with them. I don't know if they have LOEs with them. I would like to know how many sort of athletes have they signed up, because for the consumer tech, they would have to have a Garmin GoPro approach where it's like the top of the pyramid that an elite athlete endorses, and then it trickles down. And there's a lot of, because Meta could also pivot really easily into this sector. And there's a French company and also an Israeli company which already have a product. So I would really like to know, okay, what is the metrics around the athlete and the approach to the athletes here?
Yeah, it's hard to draw out much details here. It's a lot of names and brands, but okay, good call out, Pearl.
Okay, they're saying that they have no influence. That is good, organic pull. But again, it doesn't tell me a lot.
Yeah,
It
so
doesn't tell me a lot. They would have to have organic pull, especially for their consumer segment, because if they want to achieve the metrics that they're wanting to achieve with the consumer tech, they'd have to have really low cost of acquisition. So this makes sense, but it's also not telling me a lot. Like how much of those views are converting? What did you get? What happened after that?
agreed. I think there's few components within a deck, and it's different for each company, but there's a few components where you would really want to get granular and showcase your thinking. I feel like this is one of them, especially that this would be such a key funnel. You really do want to be showing what the entire system would look like, to your point, what some of the unit economics would look like. And yeah, maybe they get into it later on in the deck, but not a lot to draw out here.
Okay, cycling, newspapers, cycling. Okay, I don't know who the person citing that is. Here, I would like to. It's good to have, but it is not telling me much more than I already know from the deck. That okay, their technology is good. It's just giving me a little bit of indication that they might have traction on the market. But what I would like to see is maybe also the defense part. Somebody saying, okay, this is really beneficial. We are willing to adopt it without naming names. And here, if it's a consumer, I would rather have a cycling team say. So for me right now is I don't see any of their customers in these reviews
Mm.
outright.
Yeah, it's tricky with testimonials.
I know.
Because really, you could get a testimonial from a lot of different people. To your point, I'm sure these are all valid and true. It's just hard to draw out what was the engagement with these customers, what was the full value that they saw, did they want to continue on working with the team? Not a lot to get out of this.
Yeah. Okay, market, defense, sport. Want to know how they're going to target both of them, because the sort of go to market is going to differ really wildly for both of those. Defense, insanely huge market. I would like to see who in their team and how they're approaching, because what they ideally should want to do is how to become the operating system within the defense industry space. So then they integrate themselves like early on Palantir and Anduril did, because once you have that unlock. So I would rather like to know that more, because even you, if you take the conservative estimates, it's a huge market for defense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then on the right side, looks like they've done a bit of a breakdown on the sports front.
Yeah, 10% long-term adoption. I don't know how they came to that figure, because it's extremely hard in direct to customer. It's extremely hard in those categories to have extremely high adoption rates in the beginning. What I like when it's come down to the reverse, that we need to reach this much ARR, or we expect to reach this much ARR, and that means we have to sell these many devices, because that really then is more believable, at least for me, because the TAM Samsung, once you go there, of course, everything is huge.
Yeah, totally. Just for moving from this Parul to dive into it a bit more, what are you really looking for when you are seeing these market sizing slides? Obviously, it sounds like the numbers don't necessarily have to be exact. Nobody's expecting that, but you more so just want to understand how the team is thinking of approaching it, and then overall, if the funnel makes sense. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and also then it ties into the team. Who is there in the team to make that happen? And if you're selling, say, X number of devices, and if you're pricing them at a certain point of time, is it believable for you to achieve that?
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Let's keep going.
One platform, two markets, minimal incremental R&D, commercial. Okay, these I'd have to do the math on this to figure out the backward calculation on how many they have to sell. I would like to probe more in the minimal incremental R&D because these are two completely separate markets. So I would like to dive more deeper into, can they use the same hardware for both of the applications without any adjustments? And then, okay, the defense layer doesn't say anything much here. So for me, here I would have liked to know what is their moat, because heads on display is no longer the moat. The weight is no longer the moat. The software component, because the hardware moat can erode over time, there's many
Mm.
more well-funded. So how are they thinking about that? For me, that will be like extremely crucial to probe into. And then also, how are they integrating the software? Because a lot of things are like going back into looking at, okay, data, what proprietary data that you have, how do you integrate different data sources, how do you combine and derive real-time intelligence? So for me, that would also be really crucial, because the US Department, Andrew Will, is like using the Lattice, which is an AI that integrates 1,000 data points in real time to derive influence. And they have a huge contract with the US Army right now. So for me, that would be really crucial to see. How are you thinking about the hardware mode? How are you thinking about the software mode?
Yeah. Good call. And then a bit
Ooh,
more
more
on the
math.
yeah.
Ah, they are pre-revenue. So here for me is, you can write anything in terms of gross margins. You have not really hit the road. I don't know what is the development of your product. The one thing that really stands out, along with their claiming it's the same hardware, which I would like to dive into, is that it is a huge jump for year two in terms of scale. For me, I would like to ask them how they're thinking they would achieve that, because it's quite some bit.
I think particularly, for example, with software, there's less to drill down on. That's possible, but because this is a hardware company, I guess a lot of questions around like what the production would have to look like for that.
Yeah, and iteration cycles, how quickly they can iterate,
Yeah.
because defense contracts are like so long. And if it takes 6 months longer, how quickly are they doing the cycle of going back and forth?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay, privacy first by design. Of course, the tailwinds are there on a meta level to have that. That's a pun intended. Consumer subscription. Again, this slide doesn't say much to me, apart from, okay, they're gonna have an encrypted defense software layer. I would like to probe more into, like, what is that gonna look like? How is that gonna be? Yeah, because that would be their edge, right, compared to some of the competitors. Okay, main competitors, Meta moved into heads up display last year. Anduril, I agree that a helmet mounted is extremely heavy, but they're still doing a contract. They're in the program with the US Army to expand on that and to make it better. Simple and private, privacy first, three metrics. When I see this, I see the competitors that they're doing just in the defense space, if I can say. Mostly the French company and the Israeli company who are already have a product on the market in the consumer tech space. So I would like to also see, okay, what does the competitive landscape look like for all of the markets that you're targeting?
Completely agree. Yeah, there's definitely, you've already mentioned a few more players than Meta and Anduril, so seems like this could be built out a little bit more.
Team, the most important. Thing that stood out. Somebody is in a cycling outfit. Yay. Thing that really stands out. I cannot really tell quickly. If I take the time to look for 2 minutes, I can read impressive pedigree, impressive background. They have somebody ex US Navy, defense, that's good, ex NATO, that's good. They're going to get them into those defense channels that are crucial. I would have preferred to see who is leading, what are their relationships, how long have they known each other, who is managing, what is the commitment level of each person. And one of the things, if you take a few minutes to look at this slide, is who's doing the hardware part. That should jump out immediately to me if you're building in such resource intensive space.
100%. It sounds like you're the same. I can't seem to see who is doing what here. The roles aren't listed, which is a bit interesting. And I think it's also useful to know who is actually on the full-time team and who is maybe just in an advisory capacity, because my guess is not everybody here is actually full-time on the company.
Yeah, that's true. And I'd love to know who are the founders and how do they know each other, because that's what makes the difference a lot in the pre-seed.
Yeah, but some really impressive brands here, and seems like from the team's mix up, they have all the right channels to get in front of the right people.
Yes. Okay, go to market, defense. Okay, they're getting into some of the sectors which have easier, more innovative procurement and shorter procurement cycles, so that's good. Fast evaluation. Again, I would like to see some numbers because right now, what I see on the defense is just what they think. I want to see, okay, pilots, where are they? Where are they in the process? How much have they done? What is the value of these pilots? What is the completion time? Because otherwise, it doesn't speak a lot to me. Same for the elite seeding, teams, training centers, numbers again, how much, how many athletes have you endorsed? Because if you want the top of the funnel, top of the pyramid approach for D2C, I really want to know how many elite athletes have you approached and what teams, if it's possible to disclose.
Yes, and to your point, Parul, I find it so important on go-to-market slides and just when you're talking about go-to-market to really drill down on like the channels of how you're aiming to get in front of these people. So are you tapping into your warm network? Are these content marketing plays? Are you partnering with organizations? The phases is great. It gives a little bit of that, but I just think it's such a key point, especially now where like distribution is just increasingly becoming a big moat for a lot of companies as the technical requirements go down. It's important to know where the wedge is coming from.
Yeah, and some sort of timeline because if you're targeting both of these fields with a small team, if we just take that everybody in the slides before was working full time, it's a lot. It's a lot because the channels, as you said, the pathways are completely different for both of the sectors.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, AR snow goggles, swim goggles. I would keep it out for now because for me, it makes me question okay, this could be future markets, but it's not saying a lot, it's just confusing me because, of course, this can be used in a lot of situations. But my question would be okay, where are they thinking? Because if you go brain computer interfaces, people have spent their lifetime trying to do that. So I would say there's a more broader application to our technology, and that just shows to an investor, okay, there are future pathways to get there.
Totally. And I think my increasing take on vision is that thinking so long term is just increasingly looking like it's irrelevant because really the most important part is that you are a team that can iterate. There's probably thousands of companies that had a vision prior to Claude Code, Open Claude, and all those coming out, and now in this new agentic era has been completely wiped and they've had to pivot. So I don't focus so much on like where really are you trying to go years from now. It's what are you building right now? How do you plan to just start getting this out the door? And then is this a team that can really iterate when it comes to it? Because ultimately, every startup will have one or two minor or major pivots that they'll have to do.
Yeah, totally agree.
And this is the last slide just on fundraising.
It's the last slide. Okay, they're raising 350K, not a lot of money for the amount of things that they want to do. Here, I'd like to know what are they going to do if some of the defense pilots procurement or the signing of the contracts is extended by 6 months? How are they going to handle that? I, as an investor, I like the smaller amount. As a person who has read up a bit, I also know it is a very small amount to achieve the things that they're claiming to do, want to do, or should do. So again, for me, is what is your flex? How are you going to optimize that? Because if they raise, they would have to raise again in a year.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so Parul, let's quickly dive into, I guess, just to tie the knot on this. What's one thing that you really liked about this deck, and what is one thing that you, just the company actually broadly, what's one thing you really liked? What's one thing you didn't like so much, or you feel that the team really needs to drill down on?
One thing I really liked is the problem space and as how they're approaching it, especially in defense, because that's a huge gap to have something in mission critical environments that is low weight, that integrates really well, that is unobtrusive. That's really needed. So for me, I really like that and how they initially approached that. What I think that they could improve on, especially at the pre-seed stage, is drill a bit down, take us into the journey of the team, because at the end of the day, that is what's going to make a difference. Because it's not clear to me if I just see the team. It's pre-seed. I need to be able to know who you are, how long do you know each other, what is your incentive. Like in the previous one with Haley, it was like, okay, why are you spending the time of your life, precious time, on this? I would really, I would have loved it if that was like in one slide, boom.
Completely agree. It is arguably the most important component of this all.
Yeah.
Got it. So if we were to just round things out, in your shoes, let's say Parul is evaluating this and debating whether to write a check into the pre-seed stage. What would be your decision at this point? Is this something that you would want to learn a bit more about, or do you think at this point and with what you know, it would probably be a pass?
I would like to learn more. And the reason is because it is an extremely hard space, especially if you look at defense. And there are major players agreed, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. So I would really like to know what is the stage of development of their product? How are they iterating? What are the number of customers? What are the number of pilots? How are they approaching this? And I would really like to understand more from the team about their moat. So for me, I would really like to know that because if you just see the environment, consumer tech, many more companies can pivot on a dime.
Mhm.
Defense, a lot of companies already have millions, if not billions, in money to develop similar or parallel kind of technology. So for me, those would be the questions that I would love to ask the team.
Totally. To your point, the market pull is 100% there. There's a lot of tailwinds behind this, so the team seems fantastic. I think they have a lot of great components. As you said, a few things maybe just to drill down on and polish, but overall, this was a really cool company. So appreciate you sharing this, Parul.
Cool. Thank you so much. Loved it, Well.
Incredible. This was a ton of fun, and you are such a trooper for doing this at midnight in Amsterdam. We appreciate having you. And for those that don't know, Parul has been a phenomenal venture fellow for our team, just always helping us diligence and flag some really great opportunities. So thank you, viewers, for joining us. We do these, I believe, bi-weekly at this point, and so we will continue just bringing up some more great companies, really diving into them, so those of you interested in venture and startups can see what we're looking for. And otherwise, we'll see you on the next episode of Uncapped Notes. Thanks so much, Parul.
Bye bye.
Take care, everyone.